between Wednesdays. Just trying to get by to the next fix. Living between Wednesdays. Prefer the comics over the Netflix. Living between.
So my name's Konrad. I'm your host on Wednesday Night Reviews. So if you go on YouTube, check out Wednesday Night Reviews. I interview local comic creators. I review their books, see what's going on, and I share with the world. Today I'm joined by Jason Lowe. He's Torontonian, and he's here to to talk with me about his new book, All Nighter, as well as Star Wars and some other really cool stuff he's working on. So Jason, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, finally.
Yeah.
We've been trying to set something like this up, and now we're doing it at Toronto ComiCon. It's amazing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we've been talking about this for about 2 years, I think, back and forth.
Yeah.
So my first easy question I always like to start with for everybody, who is Jason Lowe?
I am a Toronto cartoonist. I am the comic creator behind Toronto's own pretty decent superhero, The Pitiful Human Lizard. And followed up with the Eisner Award-winning series Afterlift. And I've also done some Marvel work like Fantastic Four and a lot of the Marvel Unlimited titles for like X-Men Unlimited and Lucky the Pizza Dog. And recently, Dark Horse has published The All-Nighter, a series that Chip Zdarsky and I co-created with the same Afterlift team, Paraceline, Aditya Bedekar, and Alison O'Toole, our editor. The All-Nighter, which is a series about a family of vampires that run a late-night diner where they're trying to hide from human society, but one very geeky vampire decides to dress up as a superhero and still be a vampire, which give other monsters the same idea and wreak havoc in the city.
Absolutely. I love it. Actually, I wanted to ask you about that book then. So for those of you out there, one, you can get a physical copy of it in stores. I believe you got some here at your booth, correct?
Yep.
Awesome. It's also on Amazon Prime about a month early, which is super cool. It's how I got it. And one of the things that I wanted to ask about, so it was a really crazy world that you had these vampires that were trying to just live life. They had a late night diner basically, and like you said, the eldest boy, who's a couple hundred years old.
Not even. He's like probably like the youngest vampire.
Yeah. He basically becomes a superhero to be able to go out and do what he wants to do and be a vampire. But one of the things that I most enjoyed, and maybe that's what we'll start with, is the diner itself, their home, because it's 2 or 3 floors, it's where they live, it's everything that goes on there. You made it feel extremely lived in. Like it felt like a real place. And with some of your other books, you do that really well. So what is it that you do when you're creating that you can make a place feel real?
It's all about making sure you get all the angles covered. So before I drew the first comic page, we designed all the characters, but also since the All-Nighter Diner was going to be a character in the series, I had to make sure that all the floor plans were laid out, like from the diner ground floor to the apartments right above, because it's a 3-story building. And yeah, it was just interesting to also create a story within a floor plan layout of who's going to have the master bedroom on the 3rd floor. And not everyone's going to be sleeping in coffins. Some have just a very big king-size bed. I didn't want to make it up as we went along. I wanted to make sure that it was all covered and knowing, what kind of menu specials that they offer. The subtle details that you're going to see throughout all the issues.
For sure, yeah. Actually, then, you talked about the menu. So what is it that they serve, and what is it that they themselves sort of benefit from the diner for?
So they definitely serve lots of red meat, like bloody meat, because that's how that's what they feed off of, not really humans. Like they're good vampires that are in hiding. They don't want to cause a scene. One of the ideas that I thought would be interesting was because when we were creating characters, like I was just creating the different story, the different archetypes that we're gonna have. And originally, I was gonna have like a Vietnamese chef that cooked, because like there's when you get like pho, there's like blood cubes,
Oh,
like solidified
yeah.
blood cubes, and I figured that's a great alternative for of these vampires to offer. But I think that's also something like a chef special that they would only make for themselves.
Nice. I love it. And when it comes to the world that you've built, I appreciate it. It's not in Toronto. It feels very much like home. The other characters, specifically the police officers that are sort of regulars at the diner, I found them really interesting as well. Could you speak on how they interact with the family?
Yeah, so Andrea, who is she's just a regular cop who actually was a detective at one point. I think we haven't addressed that yet, but she's a seasoned cop who was a detective that got demoted back to working the beat again, and like she frequents the all-nighter diner and also has a relation with the head chef / owner Ian, the head vampire of the family.
And actually, as you mentioned there, so there's a head vampire of the family. The four main characters, the vampires, the family, who are they?
So Ian is he's the oldest vampire. I don't know if I want to give spoilers out.
Yeah, no spoilers, no spoilers.
But yeah, he's like I kind of modeled him off of like what if like Mark Maron was like a 6-foot tall wrestler in a way, like wrestler built, but still like tired looking. So he's the head of the crew, and then there's Andrea. No, not Andrea. There's Joy. Joy, she is actually like the second oldest vampire, even though she's in the body of a 12-year-old, because she became a vampire when she was 12. Looks can be very misleading. And there's also Cynthia. Cynthia, she used to be the CEO of a big company back in like the 90s, and then she became a vampire and joined this crew. Yep. And then Alex, who probably became a vampire in like the early 2000s, like during the emo music phase, because he still rocks that. And he is a very geeky dude that likes to dress up, cosplay, especially as a real life superhero.
Absolutely, yeah. So that is him on the cover. And what another part that I really like about this is his sister, whom, like you said, is one of the oldest, begrudgingly sort of figures out what's going on a little bit and makes up her own costume to kind of keep him in line. Can you talk about how you designed the two costumes and how you had them reflect, I guess, their personalities?
Yeah, so this is interesting because there's so many layers to these characters, because the first layer is who were they before they were vampires? What are they now as vampires? What kind of superheroes would they be while being vampires underneath? So Alex, he is a nerd just like all of us that like to dress up in a comic convention. So he reads all the comics, he watches all the movies. Of course, his costume is gonna look badass, as much as can be. Yeah. that an early 20-year-old can look. So his costume is kind of inspired from like maybe Batman from Frank Miller's Batman Year One in a way. And Joy, she's a casual fan. Like she's just kind of like tagging along with Alex whenever they're watching like the next big superhero film in the theaters. So I mean, she likes the idea that she can be a vampire, be herself, while dressed up as a vigilante. but her effort into making a costume is is not as committed as Alex.
That's a nice way to
So
put it.
she goes into her costume and grabs like her vintage tracksuit of like that kind of shows her age of that fashion at the time, and add some wings to it, creates her own mask that kind of complements Alex's superhero persona. So she's like the Robin to his Batman in a way.
Yes, I agree. And I think you've done a really fun job at showing exactly in her costume how it's kind of it's pieced together from what was the color scheme that he was using. Can I I've got these old track pants, I've got this sweater. So it's very fun to see how they react, and even just their quips towards each other, because she very much finds it a little, well, nerdy, a little awkward, which
Yeah.
I get.
And she's a 12-year-old chaperone to Alex.
Yeah. So one thing I did want to ask is, for Pitiful Human Lizard, for Afterlift that you did previously with Zdarsky, as I understand it, you did those in analog medium, pencil, pen, that kind of stuff, correct?
Yes, yeah. Afterlift was the last comic that I did, using pencils, pens, and artboards. And then, after Afterlift, so Afterlift was published through Comixology, which is one of the branches behind Amazon, and they paid me a lot of money, which I've never been paid that amount.
Oh, nice.
Because Pitiful Human Lizard is a creator-owned series that I pretty much it was fueled just from my blood and from my sweat and tears, and whatever profit I got out of those book sales, that's what fueled me. But I got page rates from Afterlift that allowed me to buy an iPad, and I was like, I'm just gonna work digitally so I can save money from art supplies.
Okay.
And it was a learning experience because All Nighter is my first digital comic. And so I was experimenting how to draw digitally during the eve of a pandemic where I was not sure that our world is going to still exist, in March 2020. So my hands were all shaky. And, it means a lot when people come to my table and people who have already read the All Nighter, and they're like, I really dig the art. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Because the thing is, if you see the pages now, I'm so comfortable drawing digitally. I felt like I was still figuring things out with the first issue, and but yeah, I'm so flattered and glad that everyone is digging the first volume right now.
Good. So for the folks out joining us today in the crowd and on YouTube land, I did want to ask, what was it like those first couple pages? As you mentioned, you had a lot of learning curve. What challenges came up for you when it comes to that transition, and how did you sort of overcome them?
So working digitally, there are a lot of tools that are available to you that I'm learning when to use them and how to use them. So when I was working analog, traditional, I would try to figure out the perspective the old-fashioned way, just by drawing all the lines in a first perspective, third perspective, 3-point perspective. But when you're working digitally, they actually have a reference tool where you can just plot out the reference points, and then they'll do it for you. But I was still learning when to use it, or how to use these reference points, because it seems so easy, but it was a lot of figuring out for me.
Huh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So now that you've completed the 5 issues that are the collection for All Nighter, I understand that you are doing a second series. Is that correct?
Yeah, we are 3 issues into season 2 of the All Nighter, and if you guys have read the first volume and are enjoying it, we get really deep into the mythology of the characters that we've introduced, such as Ian and Francis. It's so dark. I'm loving it, and I think yeah, and since my art has improved since I've gotten comfortable drawing digitally, the weight of the story, like you can actually see it in the art now.
Ah, okay. Interesting. So when it comes to sort of the next chunk of the story, because with this one it focuses on superheroes, are we going to see more superheroes for the second part, or is it going to shift more into vampire lore? Are we going to see aliens? And what can you tell us? Don't get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. I'm gonna say there's definitely gonna be more vampires. Yeah, we're gonna see other monsters. See, the thing is, the superhero costume element, that's only dressing. So like, yeah, we're really digging into the whole monster mythology.
Love it.
Yeah.
Perfect. So another thing that you've been working on lately that folks can see out in the world, and you have quite a few of them at your table, is Star Wars.
Yeah.
So how has it been getting to work on Star Wars?
Oh man, like I've been a huge fan of Star Wars like since I was a kid, especially in high school, reading all the novels like the X-Wing Squadron series, the Timothy Zahn series, and still keeping up with like all the new canon as well. So it was such a dream. I was doing a fan comic that involved Star Wars, and I posted out on Instagram's story, and Chip saw that, and he was like, "Hey, what if we just pitched like a Star Wars story to IDW? Like we both co-write it because he knows that I also write, and I'll be drawing it. It's like that's a sweet deal to me because I want to write and draw, and you know to have him open that door for me. He pretty much like had me lead the charge like after he opened the door, and I was like pitching all these stories to through IDW for Lucasfilm to Greenlight. Wow. And they liked one of them, which was pretty much like my first pick because I wanted to tell a story in Cloud City. It's like it's the place that I would want to live if I lived in Star Wars. So me and Chip co-wrote a Lando Calrissian story. Oh, cool. And we introduced 3 characters, and it explores the lower decks of Cloud City. And hopefully one day these characters, you know, now that they're established, like hopefully we'll see them grow up in The Mandalorian or one of the other Disney Plus shows. Who knows?
That would be amazing. And truthfully, I'm not super great with Star Wars lore. So I know the Cloud City where they famously had the big fight, and Luke lost his hand. Correct. Mm-hmm. So the lower parts of that city, that's kind of where Luke ended up through the big pipe, and he got picked up by Han Solo at the end there, right?
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of pipes and like just a labyrinth of like industrial technology that I had to like dig through the visual guides of Star Wars just to make sure I got it right. And yeah, because when you're going to be showing stuff to Lucasfilm, like you got to make sure it's all canon and on the mark of what they've already established. So I made their job easier for them when I was like, okay, I'm just going to make sure it's on point with some of the textbooks they've already released. But now we're telling a story in those environments that were not seen in the film, but only in those textbooks.
That's awesome. Then, you know what, just to sort of combine them, I did want to ask, because you have all this schematic drawings, all these textbook kind of stuff that you have to follow, did your work on All Night or Pitiful Human Lizard, when it comes to how you were creating the diner, for instance, sort of aid in building the world and helping it feel lived in, but also logical?
Like, wait, for Star Wars or for?
Yeah, for Star Wars, yeah.
I mean, for Star Wars, it was all already established. It was just a lot of figuring out, like, especially when we're telling a chase scene throughout Cloud City. I wanted to make sure, okay, this scene's definitely gonna have a ramp for the kids to slide down in, and there's gonna be like some pipes where they're gonna have to like maneuver around. It was like choreographing like a James Bond chase scene, but in Cloud City. So yeah, taking everything that they've established and like seeing how I can compose it. Like in a page. That was a challenging and fun part, and the thing is, I only had myself to blame for like all the details that I had to draw.
Nice. So a little bit of a victim of your own success.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Now, one thing I did want to ask, so you've done All Nighter, Afterlift, another season of All Nighters coming, Star Wars with Chip. So Chip is another, Chip Zdarsky is another prominent Toronto-based creator. I was curious how you met.
So yeah, me and Chip met when I was a little Sheridan College student that was interning at his studio. It was he was one of the founders of Raid Studio. Raid, you can actually find him at the Toronto ComiCon, but originally the founding members were Chip Zdarsky, Kagan McLeod, Ben Shannon, and Cameron Stewart. And yeah, like I actually reached out to Kagan McLeod because his work was featured on a Wizard magazine, and it was mentioned that he went to Sheridan College, and I was like, hey, I went to Sheridan College too. I mean, I'm in Sheridan College, and I want a career in comics. So I reached out to him and asked him some tips and stuff while I was in Sheridan. And then when it came time to do a work placement, I would drive there every day, and Chip shared that studio. And back at the time, this was before he was working on Marvel or DC and all that stuff. He was just an independent comic artist, comic creator, and he was also an in-house graphic designer for the National Post. So once a week, we would also go to the National Post, and I would draw some stock illustrations, like a bag of money that would be used for like the Financial Post, stuff like that. And also I'd also do some color flats for some of his freelance gigs, because he used to do some educational books about bullying or books about peer pressure, and it would be like 50 illustrations in each book with his illustrations, and I would just go in and just do the color flats, and then he would go back into those color flats and render those illustrations.
Interesting. So I did want to ask this. So previously I've interviewed Becca Kinsey, who's also here as well. And she got her break into the comics industry as a color flatter as well. Is that sort of how it happened with you? Primarily it was illustration and flatting, and then, as you built your repertoire, you kind of became an illustrator?
Yeah, I mean, because I was studying to be an illustrator when I was in Sheridan. So when I was color flattening, they showed me the shortcuts on Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, so that really helped me. I think I learned a lot on the whole comic book industry in my internship more than Sheridan College, because Sheridan College, back at the time in 2004, even before 2004 is when I graduated, they frowned upon the comic profession, and I was dead set on wanting to be a comic artist, and yeah, they were like, no, like, we're gonna teach you how to do editorial illustration or stuff that, like, gigs that are very sporadic.
Okay.
Which, early on, like, it really made me fall out of love of making art, because it's like, man, like, it's a hard business to do illustration in that kind of field. Even though, like, my heart is wanting to do comics. So it took 4 years after I graduated to go, you know what, I'm going to kickstart the superhero series that I want to see happen, a very offbeat superhero series, and that was Pitiful Human Lizard.
Beautiful. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to get out of that mindset, that slump, whatever you want to call it, because, frankly, Pitiful Human Lizard is fantastic.
Thank you.
So if you have not seen it, folks, Pitiful Human Lizard, great book. It's fun. It is all over Toronto. You can see the last issue here, and I've got the first volume right there.
Yeah, I got some copies to hand out to the audience of Pitiful Human Lizard, Some Heart Left.
Beauty. Now, one thing I did want to ask, because it was just, maybe it was coincidence, maybe not. I want to make sure I've got all the right names here. So yourself, Chip Zdarsky, Paris Elaney, and Alison O'Toole, who was the editor on Pitiful Human Lizard, as well as some of your other projects. You all happen to be Canadian, and I believe from Toronto, correct?
Yep.
How did you come into contact with each other? Because that's a lot of people to work on a project together from the same area compared to some of the other comics that are out there.
Yeah, I guess it's mainly because like it's through my network. So it was more like it's kind of like the creation of the A-Team in a way. So Chip he reached out to me out of the blue after I wrapped up Pitiful Human Lizard, and he asked, "Yes, now that you're not doing any more comics, like, what do you want to be the artist for my new project?" And this was at the time when I was I didn't feel like doing comics anymore, but then I was like, wait, Chip Zdarsky reached out to me and he wants to work with me, and like he's already a hot commodity with Howard the Duck and Star-Lord and all the sex criminals. So I'm like, okay, well, yeah, let's finally work together. And he was like, all right, but now we need a colorist. And I was like, well, you know what? Like, every week, me and my drink and draw friends get together and we just hang out at a Starbucks or a Second Cup and we just draw and talk about the comic industry. And Paris Elaine is, he's one of my closest friends. And he's a professional colorist. And I was like, dude, like his colors are awesome in Captain Canuck and everything else that he's done. I was like, if we need a professional looking colorist, we got Paris Elaine. It's like, all right, he's on board. And Alison O'Toole, she's been my editor on the Pitiful Human Lizard since day one. I actually brought her into the whole comic industry. Like, me and Alison first met at a Toronto ComiCon back in 2011 or 2012, both dressed up as Multiple Man.
Nice.
And that's how we became friends. And then we eventually became part of this cosplay charity group called the X-Men of Toronto, where she was Scarlet Witch and I was Multiple Man, and we raised money for local charities. And then when I said, hey, I want to do comics, and I know that you, on the side, write reviews for comics, and I've read your reviews. Like, they're so spot on. Like, I've read this comic, and I trust your judgment on them. And she's also an English major from Queens, so it's like, this is a no-brainer. You're gonna be my editor. Like, you're awesome. So yeah, like, she's like a champion editor. She's like the Ted Lasso of comics. She'll make. If you're like a comic creator and she's your editor, like, she'll make you feel so confident, like a champion. So yeah, and it's funny because when we brought her on, Chip hired her to edit a bunch of his other series. So now
Nice.
she's under his payroll now as his personal editor.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I gotta love it.
Alison O'Toole, go follow her on Twitter and Instagram. She's an amazing human being.
Yes, absolutely. I had the chance to meet her at the Sidekick Comics prior to when she was sort of full-time doing editing and things like that. She was lovely to speak with.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I did want to touch on, I want to make sure, because you've got a lot of work out there.
Yeah.
So you have All-Nighter here, obviously, we've talked about that. The Vampire Run Cafe, we've got Pitiful Human Lizard that we've talked about. You've also got Afterlift. So can you tell folks what Afterlift is?
Yeah, so Afterlift was a series that we worked on right after the Pitiful Human Lizard. And so it's about a rideshare driver named Janice Chin who takes this passenger who happens to be a demon that's using her service to transport souls to hell. And so Chip gave me like a 2-sentence pitch, and then I just ran with it, and I was like, oh, all right. So I was just drawing all sorts of concepts of how Janice would look like, and he had also warned me that I'm going to be drawing lots of cars because cars is not my forte. Like, drawing cars is not easy, folks, isn't it? So I had to practice drawing lots of cars for about a month, and to the point where I felt comfortable drawing cars because I knew that a lot of eyes were going to be watching this series, especially since Chip's name was going to be on it. And this was a very personal story to me because, Janice Chin, like, her likeness is actually inspired by my late cousin, Marcia, who was battling cancer. And she's battled cancer so many times and survived it many times. And at the time when, it actually all started, near the end when I was wrapping up Pitiful Human Lizard and, during Christmas, my cousin, Justin, who's the brother of Marcia, when he saw that I drew my mom as Human Lizard's mom in in Pitiful Human Lizard, he was like, "Why don't you just draw Marcia in your comic? Just draw her." It's like, you know what? Like, Afterlift became the perfect opportunity for me to do so, and it was kind of, it's a story about life and death. It's a story about the choices we make and if we are good enough to be in a good place. And I was really happy to that she got to see the beginning and ending process, and she even got to see the title win an award.
Oh, awesome.
And she passed away February 2021. But I was so glad that she was a supportive cousin to the series.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing, and that is amazing. You mentioned it's won an award. So what was the award that Afterlift won?
It won the Eisner Award in the Best Digital Series category. Yeah. The Eisner is it's the big one. It's the Academy Awards of comics. So, it's really crazy. My first project with a major comic creator, Chip, and then to win an award on that first book, it's surreal. A lot of things happen so fast.
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
Since then.
One thing that previously, when I'd interviewed some people who'd won some awards, that were kind of a big deal, much like the Eisner. Well, not quite as nice, but they were up there. They mentioned that they were almost afraid that having won the award that they won, they were like, okay, now that's my benchmark. Did you find getting the award in any way changed your process or the way you thought about your work?
It was no. I'm always my approach to making comics is always the current comic that I'm working on is going to be the best comic that I'm going to make. So whichever project it's going to be, I'm going to put my all in, and I'm going to learn some certain techniques that I'm going to infuse in that current comic that I'm working on. So that's always been my approach. So you'll probably see that my art style gets better and better, and some people would try to say that your art's gotten better, but they don't want to come off offending me, but it's no, you're right. I am trying to get better and better every time. So I don't want to be stagnant on a certain style. I want to, especially when I'm trying to tell so many different tones of stories. I've told horror stories in the Razorblade anthology that James Tynion is editing, and I have a superhero horror series like All Nighter, and my Marvel work is where I try to be much more tighter because I know more eyes are going to see it and
Yeah.
more critics are going to be very snarky about it. So it's like, all right, I'm going to try to do as best as I can. Polished look for
Yes,
Disney.
Absolutely. Actually, a fun question that I do want to make sure I ask. You've gone from Kickstarter with Human Lizard to it eventually got picked up by Chapter House, which is a company around here that is smaller. And then you've finally gone and working with Chip. You've got Dark Horse now. You've got Marvel. When it comes to the creative process, how it all works together, if you were going to make your own project again, I won't say superhero comic, because as I understand it, you're not keen on superheroes directly. But
I got my fill with Marvel. Yeah, it's fine. But
okay.
Yeah.
What way would you want to go? If you could just write something and pitch it to Marvel or IDW or whoever and have them make it for you, or would you want to go the Kickstarter route again?
I think now that I've made some friends that are editors in the industry, it's good to have those connections so I can like contact them when I'm like, hey, I got a neat pitch idea that I want to do. I have ideas, but I'm not going to just share them on this podcast, though.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But I mean, when it comes to the actual making of them, would you want to go with an industry so you can focus on writing and art, or would you want to kickstart it and have total control?
I think I'd want to try to find a right publisher that has a good marketing team as well, and they have a great distribution. Like, the great thing about working with All Nighter and Dark Horse Comics, Comixology, they have a fantastic team actually to get the word across about this book. So I mean, when you have like people that are behind the scenes, the people that I got to thank people like the Superfan Promotions that work with Dark Horse Comics and Comixology, David Hyde and Pamela Mullins, because they've really helped spread the word on our work, and I kind of want that, because what you want to do is you want to create something, but also let people know about it, and if you can get the help from professional PR people to spread the word, like, go for it. Like, so yeah, I want to lean towards the right publisher that works with that same caliber.
Okay, and as mentioned earlier, I sort of touched on it, that you're not super keen on superheroes. Like you said, you had your fill at Marvel. What is it about superheroes that, for right now anyway, isn't for you?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's isn't for me. I think there's, if I want to tell a superhero story, like the best places to tell a superhero story are, Marvel and DC, because it's full of them. But outside of that comics is a great medium to tell stories, just stories, period. All types of stories, not just superhero stories. Whether it's drama, horror, slice of life stuff. I want to tell those kind of stories, and some of the. So yes, Marvel and DC are like, even though like they try their hands on those kind of genres, but they still have that superhero element to it. Like, I want to like just be pure of telling a genuine theme or message in a story. Like it. That's something that I would want to do when I'm working something outside of DC or Marvel.
Fair, I like it.
Yeah.
And what can you tell us about Phantom Blade?
Oh, so Phantom Blade. Phantom Blade is a creation that I did. It's a fan character. It's an OG character or OC character. Yeah, as the kids would say. It's an Indonesian supernatural vigilante that I created that would fit in the Batman universe. He is the defender of Chinatown in Gotham City, and I have a lot of great ideas with the Phantom Blade. and a lot of cool looking concepts that are not like that people are not are not familiar with or have never seen before. But I mean, some of this is like influence from Indonesian horror or just Indonesian supernatural. Since I'm Indonesian, I thought it's cool to kind of show a nice aspect of entertainment that people can enjoy. And yeah, I'm hoping DC. I mean, it got a lot of traction on Twitter. I did a 3-page short story just to give people an idea of what the Phantom Blade is all about. He works as a custodial staff in the Lucius Fox Community Center in Chinatown.
Cool.
And by night he is Phantom Blade, and yeah. So DC, like, I hope you saw that pitch, and I have some story ideas I want to do. I would love to write and draw and even color like a 2-issue mini, or even like regular shorts in their Gotham anthologies.
I love it. You heard it here, folks. Tweet out, let DC know. Jason Loo's got some great ideas, and if you're watching DC, Jim Lee, get it going. So one thing, I always like to finish my interviews with the same 2 questions.
Okay.
Very easy. The first of them is, what are you reading?
Oh, okay. So I've been reading lots of X-Men stuff lately because since November, the Marvel editor Lauren Emeraux, she approached me to write and draw and color like 5 issues for the X-Men Unlimited, and it's she asked me like she said like yeah like all the characters are open game, like it's open season, so I got to pick the characters that I want to draw. So obviously Multiple Man, since I'm a Multiple Man cosplayer, I convinced her to do a 3-part story with Strong Guy. But back to your question, I had to do lots of research on the X-Men because, you know, I've been an X-Men fan since I was a kid, watching the X-Men shows and all the movies, and, you know, in and out with, you know, X-Men versus Avengers, and read all the X Factors by Peter David. But a lot has happened in the last few years, so I got back into reading House of X, Power of X, and then read through Dawn of X, finished Hellfire Gala from last year, because now there's a new one. Yeah, there's a lot to catch up on. I started Way of X right now, because the thing is, I want to know where all these mutants are in this new era of the Krakoa age. So, yeah, it was, yeah, I wanted to make sure that the Multiple Man and Strong Guy story that I was telling is still in continuity. And it would make my editor's job easier, give me less notes if I knew my stuff.
History,
yeah. I was going to say curse. And yeah, so I did that, and then I also yeah, so part 2 of Madrox and Strong Guy is going to be available tomorrow, Monday, on the Marvel Unlimited app. It's going to be X-Men Unlimited issue number 28 or 27. And the week after that, I did a Leela Chinney story. Oh. For those that don't know, Leela Chinney, she is like, she's a mutant punk rocker who is inspired by Joan Jett.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And yeah, I did a very fun story where she is in a reality dating show. A reality dating show. And then I did another fun story with some really cool mutant kids that I grew up with back in high school, and I got to reunite them. I'm not going to say who they are, but if you followed my career, one of them is another favorite X-Men of mine, and she's in it, and it's her birthday, and yeah, they're all going to have fun in this short upcoming in Marvel Unlimited. X-Men Unlimited.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's it like to get to play with those characters? Because like you said, you grew up with them, you liked them as a kid. What was it like to get to jump in there and tell your own story with them?
I mean, it's a delight for sure because, well, for one, getting permission to play in the Marvel Sandbox, that's awesome. And to go, hey, can I borrow this sandbox toy and this sandbox toy? It's like, yeah, go ahead. No one's playing with them. It's like, all right. And then, can I play with them this way? And they're like, yeah, that's cool. I think, like out of like the 20 ideas, there were only a couple that were like, oh, you can't play with it this way because actually this person got that toy booked for another month. So you can't. So you got, there's other ways to work around that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Actually, the funny no, I was going to say something that was going to spoil
don't
a Marvel secret. No.
Don't get yourself in trouble. I was going to say, I'm always very curious as per how, especially with Marvel and DC.
5 minutes left.
No problem. I'm always very curious, especially with Marvel and DC, how they keep all that continuity together. So it's cool to know that at Marvel, you're getting approval to play, but if someone else has got a character wrapped up in a story, they at least keep it so that you can't play with the timeline or whatever too much to mess anybody up.
And it feels very meaningful, especially like when I'm telling all these stories, that it feels like me being a fan, I feel like I'm just creating like fan fiction, but it's actually canon of my favorite characters. But they're saying like, no, this is canon. This is part of the Jonathan Hickman X-Men universe. It's like, that's awesome. Like, yeah. There's even times where like, because there was like stories where like I only have time just to write a certain story. I just don't have the time to draw it. But like, I would even make sure like, oh, if you're gonna be drawing like this part of Krakoa, like make sure it's like inspired by this illustration. Like I feel like I was doing like part of the overstepping and doing like the editor's job. It's like, yeah, can you like make it look as fancy of how Pepe Larraz did and like did Krakoa in this scene? Yeah. That's
amazing. So my last question for today then, very easy, I hope. What do you want the fans out there to know?
Yeah, just follow me on Instagram and TikTok. I'm at Jason Lowe Makes Comics. I got hacked. My old account got hacked early this year, and what was great about my IG account was it had a great visual history of my progress of making comics, from me as a cosplayer to Pitiful Human Lizard and all. But unfortunately, like some crypto hackers ruined it. So I'm just trying to gain my followers back and let people know that I'm still doing awesome stuff. So if you want to know what I'm up to, just follow me on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter, rebel_Loo, Low, LOO. And you'll be posted on my updates. Sorry? Oh, you can find me at table P52. Yeah. I'll be there for like 2 more hours or 1 more hour. Yeah.
Beautiful. So if anyone wants to get any of the books that we've talked about today, they'll be able to come to your booth, meet you, get a signed copy, all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Jason, I did want to say absolutely thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today at Toronto ComiCon, which is amazing. And I hope to see you again and see your success as you go.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad that we finally did this. And for everyone that stuck around, I got free comics. So come right up.
Awesome.
I'll give them.
Come get free comics, guys.
Get some free comics.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Yeah. Collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries. You need answers. When did Batman become Green Lantern? I get it. True believer, not lying. Always up for an awesome summer crossover.